Hi, I'm Mark Minnella, founder and president of Integrity Investors. And if you have a moment, I'd like to share with you some investment insights from a biblical point of view. A wise Christian once told me that everything we do, every action we take is either an act of worship or an act of rebellion towards our God and Savior. Over the years, I found this to be true and believe if you think about it and boil it down for yourself, you too will find that most, if not all, actions can be sorted into these two camps, including our investments. Let me explain by first asking a question. Did you ever meet someone who said one thing and did another? At best, it was confusing. It was obvious that what they were communicating with their words was clearly in conflict with what they were communicating with their actions. Today, more than ever before, there seems to be so much less continuity between what most people say and what they actually do. The virtue of truth does not seem to be a core value the bulk of our society embraces. Maybe you've seen some of the polls of college students where the majority admits they would cheat to pass a test, or college graduates that confess they would or have lied to get a job or an advancement in their career. To a Christian, this seems to fly in the face of everything we believe to be right. Yet large portions of those who were polled claim to be Christians. So what's happening? Well, as our world continues to promote the values of success, worldly success, as defined by how much money and power you have, we see more and more individuals embracing this temporal concept and the attainment thereof as their core value, making this their most precious treasure. The value of money then becomes more important than the truth, and the chasm between what is said and what is done grows ever wider. It ultimately comes down to our personal values. We all have a set of personal values, and these guide our actions. Sure, no two people share identical sets of values, but for most Christians, there's a wide expansion of common ground. Christian values are based on our faith in Jesus Christ and God's written word, the Bible. When making decisions in this life, it is this value set, our beliefs, based in God's love, that guide our actions. I remember an experiment I observed when I was in college. The instructor explained this was an experiment in sensory perception, and that blindfolded, a participant would be exposed to different physical sensations and then would be asked to identify what it was. A volunteer was solicited, I believe his name was Greg, blindfolded and seated next to the professor in front of the whole class with his hand and arm laying palm up on the desk. The professor then pulled a tissue out of the tissue box on his desk and gently rubbed it against the participant's forearm and asked Greg what he thought it was. Greg, with confidence, proclaimed it to be a Kleenex. When asked how he could be so sure, he admitted seeing the Kleenex box on the desk and hearing the professor pull it out and finally feeling it on his arm. With Greg still blindfolded, the professor noisily opened a box of matchsticks, pulled one from the box, struck it on the side of the box, and then held it up for everyone to see. Even in the back of the room, I clearly heard the unique scraping sound a match makes when it's struck, and there could be no mistake in the smell of sulfur burning as the match burst into flame. No doubt the blindfolded participant was acutely aware of what was happening as well. Without missing a beat, the professor silently placed the match in an ashtray, grabbed an ice cube from underneath his desk, and touched it directly on Greg's arm. Instantly, Greg screamed and jerked his arm away violently from the desk. And as he whipped his blindfold from the face, he began yelling at the professor about being so irresponsible and burning him. It was a good half minute before he realized the professor was holding an ice cube, not a lit match. Greg's eyes shot back and forth between his arm and the ice cube several times before he finally adjusted to the fact that he had not been burned. Greg fully believed the professor had placed a lit match in his forearm and acted accordingly. Though this is an extreme example, it clearly demonstrates that we all act according to what we believe. The same is true in everyday life. If we believe something to be dangerous, we take precautions. If we believe something to be safe, we're at ease with the handling of or experiencing what the item or the situation will bring. It's our set of values and beliefs that influence our decisions and determine our actions. Why should it be any different regarding investment decisions and actions, the most common of which is buying and selling of stock? For reference, the term stock is short for stock certificate. It refers to the document used as evidence or proof of ownership in a corporation. For a Christian, it's essential to understand that owning stock means you are an owner of that company. The more stock you own, the larger your ownership of that corporation. As an owner, you participate in the profits made from the activities of the company. You also have certain rights, such as are represented by the type and the amount of stock you own. Voting rights or the influence regarding leadership and control of the company are a couple of the more common rights. Because you are an owner, a participator in the profits, you also are indirectly participating in the activities of the company. When you buy stock, you are effectively partnering with all other stock owners in that company. Though you may not be held directly responsible for the actions of the company as a minority stockholder, you are a participant just the same. Let's say for ease of math, you own 10% of a company. If that company creates a cure for some terrible disease, you have the pleasure of knowing that that company you have become a partial owner in created that cure. If you were the sole owner, owning 100% of the company stock, you would be credited personally for making such a great breakthrough and would reap the rewards of possible profits from the patents, rights, and sale of this great product. As a 10% owner, you participate proportionately in such a breakthrough. The same, unfortunately, is true on the other side of the formula. If the company you own creates, distributes, markets, or promotes products that are clearly offensive to Christian biblical values, then you have the unfortunate privilege of participating in these activities through the stock ownership in that company. Some such products or services that most Christians would agree violate God's basis of love that harm or abuse His children include pornography, the use and abuse of individuals for sexual activities, prostitution, abortion, addictive products that harm the user, or even anti-Christian, anti-God entertainment and publications, or gambling. When we own stock in a company that develops, distributes, or promotes such products or services, we are passively participating in that biblical offensive activity. To illustrate this point more clearly, let's pretend there was a company that made 100% per year return for its stock owners. Most people would love to have an investment portfolio full of this type of stock. But what if this company made such good returns from the production of child pornography and prostitution in a third world nation? We may feel different about participating in such profits. Some stock owners may argue that they didn't exploit or destroy the children's lives enslaved to prostitution and pornography. They just invested in a company. Yet by buying the stock, an investor has financially shown support for the activities, endorsed their money in the services, and had profited directly from the abuse of these children. A stock owner may be a passive participant, but a participant just the same. To maintain integrity between our core beliefs and our God and our investment actions, we need to know with clarity what we truly believe, have a strong grip around our faith, and then be conscious of what we are participating in when we invest in stocks. You know, Larry Burkett once wrote, "We need to be careful about what our investment dollars are supporting. Some companies that typically offer strong profits prey on the weakness of others. Gambling enterprises are a good example. Christians need to think twice about investing in any company that would be deemed socially unethical." He says, "My advice is to stay away from any company that makes money from activities that are morally reprehensible." Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that quote. The good news is many companies don't participate in such items or services. Yet we must still be careful. A company can do many things with their profits. They could be used to expand the business, develop new products, or they could be distributed to the stockholders in the form of dividends. However, a corporation, just like an individual, can also make charitable gifts. If you own stock in a company that gives money to organizations that promote or provide products, services that are contrary to your biblical values, you have, as a partial owner in that company, participated in the funding of those activities. We also need to be careful with our purchase of bonds. Just like stocks, it's essential to understand what bonds are so we can fully understand how they may play a role in the biblical responsible investing process. A bond is a debt instrument. It's an IOU or a promissory note. Bottom line is, a bond is a contract to pay the bondholder a specific amount of interest over time and then to pay back the original loan amount at the end of the time period. It's not ownership in a company, but lending to that company. The bond purchaser becomes the lender. Okay, So a bond essentially is you lending money to a corporation or a government entity. Now, how does that fit with the biblical principles of faith-based investing? Interestingly, the Bible tells us in Deuteronomy that lending is a blessing as compared to borrowing or being a curse. You see, borrowing equals curse, lending equates to blessings. So if someone is purchasing bonds, lending money to the corporation, then they may be participating in a blessing. I say may because the same concepts of stewardship apply to bonds as they do stocks. Let me give you an example in the form of an imaginary letter written from a foxhole in the Middle East. My dearest Sally, I miss you and the kids so much. It seems like it's been forever since I've been home, and I've seen so much blood, pain, and destruction. I lost both of my friends in a battle last week. Remember Bob? He's on his way home, lucky guy, though I don't know if his leg will ever heal right. But on another note, the enemy doesn't seem to be able to replace the equipment or keep supplied. I believe they're running out of money to finance their war against us. Recently, I saw they were issuing bonds to raise money to fight us. They were promising to pay huge interest. Hey, maybe we should loan them the money. Sure, they're the enemy and it may advance their cause, even cause us to be captured or defeated or worse, killed. But think of the returns. Can you imagine an American soldier in the Middle East writing home to his wife such a letter? Of course not. No one in their right mind would go to war while simultaneously financing the enemy. And the same can be true with your investments. What kind of insanity would have to exist for a pro-life individual to knowingly purchase bonds issued by a company that supports abortion clinics? Or what individual with strong convictions regarding the damage done by pornography and prostitution would purposely buy bonds in a company that produces pornography or a business that runs international prostitution houses? It just doesn't make sense. If a Christian investor has a knowledge of what they are supporting, participating in, or profiting from, then such investments would become ugly and distasteful, a compromise of that which we hold most precious, our relationship with and the honoring of our God and Savior. Another way to look at it, another possibility emerges if we accept the biblical principle of being a steward of all we have instead of an owner. Psalm 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." There are similar verses in Leviticus and Haggai. We also see in 1 Corinthians 4:2 that it is required of a steward that he be found faithful. From this perspective, should we consider whether God, the one everything we manage in our life belongs to, would be comfortable financing the endeavor we may be lending to? There are those who say the Bible can be interpreted any way a person wants. That's true. Any book can be interpreted any way a person wants. But that doesn't mean the true meaning of the author is being respected. Even for me, there are things that God has recently shown me in His Word that not so many years ago were unimportant or not even understandable to me. It does seem true that each of us, seeking an ever deeper relationship with God, receives understanding of varying degrees at differing times in our life. No two journeys, no two lives are exactly the same. As such, I can't tell you outside of God's Word what may be true and what you need to do. I can only share what I believe God has revealed to me. It is then between you and Him to discern what is truth and of value. So if I may, please let me share what in my journey towards Christ I have come to see. First, as a Christian, I am to be aware, awake, and conscious of what I do with my life and live it on purpose, and to care for my neighbor, put others before myself, turn away from sin, and separate myself from those that embrace sin, including sexual immorality, drunkenness, greed, laziness, gluttony, murder, stealing, and so on. I'm to be careful not to put myself in a relationship with those who don't hold the same values God has instilled in me, especially one where I have little or no control. His desire is that I embrace the example of His love and put behind me the misguided values of my life before Christ. And in everything I do, glorify God. And that's why the knowledge of biblically responsible investing is important to me. Because in the Bible, God commands us in 1 Corinthians 15:33 through 34 Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. Awake to righteousness and do not sin. The bottom line, by owning stocks that produce, provide, or promote anything biblically offensive, I'm participating in these activities. If these activities cause others to falter, I, as a stock owner of that company, are responsible for causing such stumbling. If the company's value increases because my stock purchase and that of others bid up the stock, then we have contributed to the growth of a company that is offending God. If such companies give financial donations to organizations involved in biblically offensive activities, I have participated in the funding of the enemies of God. So why is faith-based investing important? Because I'm commanded by God to sin no more, and my stock ownership unequally yokes me to the corporate sin of the company I have purchased ownership in. If our lives as Christians are to be honoring to God, then our actions cannot compromise that objective. I personally have come to a point in my life where I realize every action is either an act of worship or an act of rebellion against the one true God. This includes my actions regarding money, possessions, and yes, investments. Though there are no directives regarding investment vehicles specifically designed as holy in the Bible, there are clear passages that define sin, rebellion against God. So what solutions are there for those who wish to honor God with their investments? Though limited, there are resources, products, and professionals available today that were scarce not so many years ago to help you. As a starting point, please consider utilizing the two-part process inspired by Matthew 10:16 that has from the beginning been the foundational guidelines for integrity investors. Matthew 10:16 reads, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." If we're only as harmless as a dove, we may very well get eaten alive by the wolves of the world. And if we're only wise as a serpent, then we may end up hurting others. We need the tools and wisdom to understand how to develop a portfolio, to pick investments that correlate with our objectives, personality, and time horizons. We need knowledge and understanding of how the stock market and the bond market works, how to analyze and research investments, and how to develop an investment discipline. This utilization of worldly knowledge, understanding how money works, is the being wise as a serpent part of the formula. But we also need to be aware of the impact our investments have in our lives and the lives of others. By being conscious of what we are participating in and supporting with our investment dollars, we can purposely choose investment products that don't compromise our personal beliefs and that do not harm others. Utilizing care and compassion in the use of our worldly wisdom is being harmless as a dove. Investing with integrity means your money works to achieve both these distinct yet highly compatible objectives. Your money can be put to work on achieving your personal financial objectives, such as creating a secure and comfortable future for yourself, caring for and educating your family, and all important financial objectives you may have, while deliberately utilizing only investment products that are in alignment with your beliefs. A biblically responsible approach to investing helps your money perform both tasks without compromise. You can invest with integrity.